What's up, y'all? It's your boy Karis, and today I'm bringing you the definitive guide for Blood Deathknight in Season 1 for PvP. This spec is super disruptive, does actually a fair amount of damage. I've had Death Strikes hit for upwards of 1,000,000. Soul Reaper hit up for 1,000,000. Of course, those numbers are kind of crazy, and usually that's not always the case, and it always depends on what you're fighting, because Death Strike is physical damage. Now, I have a couple different builds. Well, more one that flops around with couple different talents and in between the hero trees. And I'll break down how both kind of do damage. For starters, Deathbringer is doing the most amount of damage as far as I've seen it. Soul Reaper 4 Blood is actually kind of nuts because you can use your two weapons with Last Dance, Dancing Rune weapon, basically, where you get 3 charges of your blood plague on them. So that's 3 diseases, 3 death strikes, 3 soul reapers. Now the thing with Deathbringer is it does a pile of damage with the way that it works with your marrow rend and everything else. So after Reaper's Mark explodes, your next marrow rend costs no runes and summons 2 scythes to strike your enemies. The first scythe strikes your target for X amount of damage and has a 20% chance to apply Reaper's Mark. The second strike strikes all enemies around your target for X amount of damage and applies blood plague and deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. So this DK was almost scared. This DK was scared. These are the kind of games I'm having. This was with Deathbringer. I've had a few games as Saline. As you can see, Death Strike is hitting fairly hard. That was with Runic Weapon, or the Strength. And this is, I think, where I finally went Sanguination. And I'm getting Death Strike to hit for upwards of 668k. Now, of course, that is a crit. But at the same time, what a lot of people don't know is your Death Strike damage is also accumulated into your Runic Weapon damage as well. So, and with your Soul Reaper, Exterminate's hitting hard, Wave of Souls, Blood Boil, Reaper's Mark is hitting exceptionally hard as well. Now, one of the things that I do find with Blood is you're able to kidnap healers, you're able to basically stop most casters from casting most of the time. You can be absolutely annoying with Blood. You have 2 grips on a 15-second cooldown. You have Kick on either a 15 or 13-second cooldown on Cold Thirst. You have Blinding Sleet. You're very disruptive as Blood. You have really good team utility with Anti-Magic Zone, just like every other DK spec, of course. But you have access to Strangulate, so you can play with a really heavy stun-focused class like Demon Hunter, Windwalker, or actually not Windwalker, like Demon Hunter or anything else can be completely unkillable. Demonology, Warlock. A lot of classes have a really hard time staying on a target with you gripping them every 15 seconds. And with Raise Bomb, or A-Bomb's Limb, and Grip of the Dead, Death and Decay reduces the target of the movement speed by 90%, decaying by 10% every second, but you also have Chains and with that as well. So you're very disruptive. You slow everything. You're gripping everything. You're really annoying to deal with. You have a range kick. You're just doing all these things to be super annoying. And you actually have pretty good sustain and really good sustain with actually being able to finish by using Soul Reaper and then dumping your Death Strikes into the target with Exterminate or Reaper's Mark, where it just deals a ton of your damage. I am running the 30-second cooldown just because it feels nice to get it back as soon as you can, just like Tombstone, where your Dancing Rune weapons fall off. You're going to use this, and then you're going to have about 20 seconds worth of burst, and then by the time that 20 seconds worth of burst is over, you're already pressing Reaper's Mark again and doing huge damage with your Reaper's Mark. So by the time that you get that 3rd Reaper's Mark, you've got another 10 seconds of burst with that Reaper's Mark and 2 with your Dancing Rune weapon. So that's one thing to think of it. Of course, this build, I feel like sources more around bursting, doing burst damage, and having good sustain with your Blood Plague. And it has a chance to apply Soul Reaper to targets below 35% health. I've actually had this hit multiple targets and actually gotten Soul Reap on several targets. Um, so Deathbringer is really the annoying burst damage spec. And now Sane Lean is an interesting one. It actually makes you a little bit tankier because instead of this one, I find a little more weird, but it does make your death strike damage a little bit higher. And the way that is you're running the rune of sanguination, so on the target's missing health, your death strike deals more damage. You can run Rune of the Fallen Crusader for a little more sustained damage on your other spells, but your death strike damage is actually relatively high, especially since you're stacking mastery so much. And what I find with Saline is, I believe here in the talents, Death Strike can heal you for 0.25% of your health while affected by Blood Plague, and Vampiric Touch, Vampiric Strike heals you for 1% of your health. So 0.1, and that's per target. So this can actually heal you quite a bit. While you are within Death and Decay, your physical damage taken is reduced by 5, and your chance to gain Vampiric Strike is increased by 5%. This is really good because not only is this, let's say this a 15% chance on this. I'm not sure how all that modifier works, but essentially you always have Vampiric Strike, and Vampiric Strike is actually doing quite a bit of damage. Impact of the Sane Lean. I've had this hit for a lot. You store 50% of all shadow damage dealt in your Blood Beast to explode for additional damage when it expires. I've had this hit for about 800k. Of course, with blood, everything. 800k for some specs isn't very much, but you're also unkillable and you're peeling the entire enemy team or kidnapping healers across the map. When Vampiric Strike damages an enemy affected by your blood plated, duration increases the duration of the disease by 3 seconds and deals 10% of the remaining damage to the enemy. After Gift of the Sand Lean ends, your next hard strike consumes the disease to deal 100% of that damage to the target. So if your Blood Plague's going to say, let's do 300k damage to that one target, then you hit them with your Vampiric Strike or your Heart Strike. It does an extra, let's say it does about 500-600k. Your Marrow runs aren't hitting hard anymore, but with this spec, it's giving you raw stats and it's giving you a lot more sustain versus Deathbringer, I feel like. And this is an interesting one. So while Vampiric Blood or Dark Transformation is active, you gain Gifted the Sane Lane, which basically just gives you Vampiric Strike for the duration of Blood Pact or Vampiric Touch, and that lasts for 14 seconds. And Vampiric Strike actually hits harder than Heart Strike. I think it does about 100% more damage overall. And it actually makes everything else pretty nuts. So Vampiric Strike has a 10% chance to summon a Blood Beast to attack your enemy for 10 seconds. Each time the Blood Beast attacks, it destroys a portion of the damage dealt. When the Blood Beast dies, it explodes, dealing 50% of the damage accumulated to nearby enemies and healing the Deathknight for the same amount. So Red Thirst is a great talent for that. Reduces the cooldown on Vampiric Touch by 2 seconds per 3 runic power spent. Which basically that's 6 seconds off every Death Strike. And it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. So that's another thing where you should have that every, I would say, 45 seconds. So your chances of actually getting a ton of damage from your Blood Beast, and I know it's not an insane amount of damage as far as it sits, but the thing is Sand Lean is both a healing spec and a DPS spec for Blood and Unholy. And the thing is Vampiric Strike heals you. Well, you get 2% active leech from this. You get 3% active leech, so 5. And then from your Death Strike, you also get, where is it? you get another 12% leech. So 18% leech total for blood for pressing Death Strike for 8 seconds. And with 3 diseases and everything else, you are healing for a ton. And you're able to maintain your blood shield a lot better versus the other way around. And instead of running, let's say, a Fixate with this, you can run Gloom Ward. So you always have 25% physical damage. So you're basically like having a warrior's avatar or something like that, right? Sorry, I had to sneeze. Alright, much better now. Anyway, so more things to be disruptive. You can run Spell Warden, Strangulate. You have a lot of annoying things as blood. You can even run Dark Sim. So it's a pretty funny thing. You are doing a ton of damage, but I think both are very similar as far as the damage output. But you're definitely going to have more sustain with Sanline. Sorry, I keep sneezing. But anyway, I think when it comes to blood and Deathbringer, Saline, and everything else, those 2 hero talent trees, one's going to do really good into melee cleaves, another one's going to do really good in Sanline. I would say does really good into melee cleaves. And Deathbringer does really good into casters. Or Deathbringer does really good into casters. Sorry, I keep sneezing. I'm like dying. I'm not sure where the hell that came out of. But I've seen games where I'm able to just top the damage. Like here. This was with Sanline. My sustained damage is a lot higher. As you can see, hitting into plate, 2 plate. And I've had Deathstrike itself hit for 1 million on mages, warlocks, things that are casters, and hit rather hard. Unfortunately, like here, I didn't get the 3 the 3 Soul Reapers on the target until the final end. And then I did it, and it actually does hit pretty hard. It's a nice little finisher. It's like you can put it on them when they're 60% and then dump your Death Strikes into them, and it can actually just force a kill. It's actually kind of funny. So that's one thing to think, like, where, okay, your damage is higher. You've got all these extra things that are just dealing a pile of damage. And Death Strike damage is baked into your rune weapon as well. It doesn't scale quite as high, but it's pretty close to hitting 1 million. Even on plate. This is another one where I just kept getting CC'd. This is Deathbringer. This was in a melee cleave. And you can see where Deathstrike, again, is just dealing a ton of my damage. Reaper's Mark's doing a ton of my damage. Exterminate's dealing a ton of my damage. And I just have a ton of disruption as blood, and I'm able to peel for whoever's getting hit endlessly. And they don't want to ever hit me because I have, 15 plus leech, and I'm dealing a ton of damage, and I don't have any enchants on my gear quite yet. So there's a lot more leech I could get, and other stats, and everything else, and things that would make me a lot stronger with the tier set as well. But anyway, y'all, I just wanted to bring you the Blood Deathknight guide, how it works, how it's looking, and just kind of show you kind of like, I find Saline to do better in the melee cleaves and Deathbringer better in the caster comps. It's a very disruptive and fun spec to play, and it is really annoying. So if you ever want to play Blood, there it is. You can run 2s, you can run 3s with this. Blood is actually the perfect 2 spec, I would say, as far as being unkillable, high dampening games, and dealing enough sustained damage to actually kill something. Maybe not right off the bat, but as dampening goes further and further, Saline might actually push ahead of Deathbringer. But definitely in RBGs, Blood will be good. Just a ton of healing, a ton of different things. They buffed all the tank damage in the game, brought Warrior, just every tank in the game, and this is actually Troll as far as Blood, because Blood already had a ton of damage, and now it's even doing more damage. So now it's like, let's see what we can do with this, and let's see what we can push. But anyway, y'all have a good one. I've got another guide coming out for Unholy, so stay tuned. See ya.